Hello, welcome to Back to the City. I'm Simon Calder, and today I have one of the emerging artists in the Twin Cities that I'm most excited about right now. This is Josie Hasnick, who is FINICK. You're going to perform one of the songs from the record Out to Sea, Captain Tory, in the MCN6 TV studio halfway through the episode.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am really excited about these two songs that you've most recently released. I hear that you are midway through making your second full-length record at the moment.
I am.
As well. Where are you doing that?
Minnehaha Recording Studio.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Back to the City used to have a collaboration with Minnehaha Recording Company.
Small world.
And I see that Tony Williamette was who you recorded these two songs with.
Yeah.
We used to have bands come in and we would make music videos for new music that bands hadn't put out studio versions of yet. So we love the Minnehaha Recording Company.
Yeah.
I also really love your first records. Something I'd like to focus on is the transition from Where Could We Go, that first LP, to these new songs. On the one sheet, it highlights there's a step up in production quality and concept. So, I mean, you have Taylor James Donsky on the stand-up bass, you have Jack Johnson on the fiddle, you have Jake Johnson on the fiddle, and it's well mixed and everything. What is your sense of the difference and or continuity from your music prior to Out to Sea, into Out to Sea, and then beyond perhaps to the songs that you're presently recording?
Yeah. I mean, recording the two singles was a little different than recording the album because there was less instruments involved. It took a lot less time because it was only two songs. On the album, there was a full band, basically, with my two friends, playing bass and drums.
And who are the other band members?
Ruby and Adriana Matheson. They are twins, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My best friends.
Your best friends are twins?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Best friends and band members, the twins?
Best friends, band members. We live like 5 minutes away from each other, walking. Go to school together, everything. And they were a big part of the process of recording the album, which was not the case on the singles because neither of them play upright bass or the fiddle.
How did you select that instrumentation for those two songs?
For those two songs, I know I wanted fiddle because it kind of got
Sea shanty feel.
Sea shanty theme, yeah. So I knew I wanted that because I love a good fiddle moment. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it fits on the songs perfectly, yeah.
Yeah, and then my cousin who lives in Michigan suggested upright bass for the two songs, and so we listened to that, and I thought it sounded also really cool. And I kind of liked how it like sounded like a creaking ship, almost like kind of haunted.
Yeah. The stand-up bass itself sounds like a creaking ship.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Which was just a really cool added texture. And we got to in the studio and recorded a bunch of parts, and they sounded complete. So we didn't really need to add any other instruments besides those.
Of course, the two pieces do fit very well together. It says on the one sheet, again, that the two sea-themed tracks, Captain Tory tells the story of a pirate whose greed and ambition leads to his own destruction, as told through the lens of an old friend, which I think is such an interesting component and something I'd like to focus on more closely in a moment. And then Sailor Out to Sea is the song of a vengeful siren luring sailors to their graves on the open ocean. Conceptually, they fit very well together, not purely because they're both set at sea, but some of the same existentially, I think. There are some recurring themes with greed.
Yeah.
is one, and the difficulty of staying on one's path and the risk of failing to stay on one's given path.
Yeah.
Which I think is a theme in your older material too. So I'm interested in what thoughts you have about that, whether you agree that there's a continuity of this theme, and your thoughts on using storytelling and the sea context to visit some of these same themes, the difficulty of staying on one's path. Were you able to go to new places using storytelling in a different way and these sea metaphors, stories?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I didn't really notice the themes before you pointed them out, but I think that's really interesting. I do think that greed is like a pretty noticeable theme in the two singles, particularly. And I don't know, I've always been drawn to sea themes in general, just because I think they're cool. Like pirate movies, mermaids, I just think it's interesting. And so I wanted to write songs about them because I think the whole concept of being out to sea in the first place, in pretty much every like content about it, it's sort of like you can lose yourself. And I just think it's fascinating how it's really easy for there to be a dark twist when you're sailing, and you could die.
Yes. Okay, so the stakes are high.
Yeah.
It's, and we hear the sea at the very beginning of Sailor Out to Sea, which is a nice touch. Could you say a little bit about the production there?
Yeah. Originally, it was my friend Adriana's idea, who was on the first album, and she thought it would sound cool, and I was like, okay, well, we'll check it out. And we did not record the audio clip ourselves. We were basically just in the studio scrolling on free audio clips online, be like, which one sounds cool, which one sounds good, and sort of just used the one that I felt like fit best.
Well, I didn't hear the other ones, but this one fits well.
Yeah. there were some other ones that didn't really fit so well, but yeah, that was a cool thing to do. So I didn't really do that much before, except for maybe with for us to share with the typewriter at the beginning of the song, but it's kind of fun to play with that.
Yeah. So with most people, I suspect, are familiar with the siren, like the myth, the notion of the siren. And it's interesting for me that the Sailor Out to Sea song is, the voice is addressing the sailor who could lose sight of his path and be led astray. And then in Captain Tory, as established, there's the friend of Captain Tory who's reflecting on how Captain Tory allowed himself to go astray. So interesting things are going on with perspective. What thoughts do you have about that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Sailor Out to Sea, I thought it would be cool to write a song from the siren's perspective of what do they actually sing to lure sailors into the water. Just because, I don't know, that's something I hadn't really explored that much before in other stuff I'd seen. And then with Captain Tory, it really started with the first line of gather around and listen closely. And I think I really wanted to like explore this idea of like it's sort of like a bard, you know,
Yeah.
like storytelling with songs and sort of being like, oh, I know a tale that I can tell you about. This happened to someone I know, which I think sort of, for me at least, added this sort of different aspect of storytelling.
Absolutely. For me, it gets particularly interesting when there's a kind of confessional component. Captain Tory's friend is talking about their experience, the plural, Captain Tory and I. Brushed off the dust, you took my hand, we shook as you told me of her name. So we have Captain Tory and the friend in real time, and there's a we, and wandering around we found each other falling face down onto the deck.
Yeah.
They both fall. That's really interesting. I feel like the storyteller has learnt something from the experience, lived to tell the tale, and is now using this oral storytelling tradition to communicate a moral to listeners. Whereas Captain Tory underwent an experience, fell, and then the falling fits nicely with sailor on a ship, come and kiss my lips, sailor on a ship, lean until you tip, as they're being beckoned to fall. What thoughts do you have about that? That if I feel like the storyteller in Captain Tory is also a character who has fallen and risen.
I think it's interesting to think of, in Captain Tory, like, the higher you fly, the further there is to fall. And I do think there could be an aspect of, like, crossover in the songs. Like, it's entirely possible that Captain Tory encountered sirens and was, you know, being lured by them into the ocean. And I think it's interesting because in the first verse where it's just Captain Tory and their friend meeting, that's sort of like they're still both equals and they're still both like kind of innocent to the world outside of them.
Yep. Before the sword, before the title, and so on.
And it's sort of like they're just normal, just hanging out, and then Captain Tory goes and becomes super successful and lets it get to her head. And eventually is the cause of her own destruction.
Absolutely. Proud to ruthless is a phrase that really struck me. Pride can be a good thing. It's nice to be proud of one's achievements. And we can easily understand how it can transform into ruthlessness. It's both the chorus, where there's a million different ways that you can take things too far and take until it's gone. It's both that chorus and then also later on in the song, the melody, the vocal melody that we're used to in the verses shifts to, and then I feel like a moral is being introduced, like the further development of the moral from the chorus. Youth can fill you with ambitious fantasies, and you can try to reach them, but it might take more than what you deemed. It's interesting, as you're one of the youngest guests on Back to the City, but I really love how you are able, through the craft of this song, to, I think, very persuasively present this moral about the risks of being a young person from this place of persuasively from this place of wisdom. And then for me, like the true moral, like the one line where this friend of Captain Tory demonstrates and shares their wisdom is, the question, is there a line that you can draw not to cross? Is that a particularly important part of the song for you?
Yeah, it's sort of just like, you know, you can take things a step too far, and that's when you're just gonna start going on this like downward slope. And then it's sort of like, and because then it says, and will you keep that promise or be the first who did not? And it's sort of like, there's sort of this like understanding, like you have to find a balance. But if you get too ambitious or too greedy and start to cross those boundaries that were keeping you in balance, it's not going to end well. You're going to tip the scale.
Can you keep a promise to yourself, first and foremost, about what you will and what you won't resort to doing?
Right.
And that's a way to cultivate self-trust and remain in integrity. And if the person that does that is less likely to be lured by the siren.
Yeah.
So let's now take a look at some of the earlier material, because I think that these kinds of questions are being raised there. There's some similar themes and so on. So in Stones in My Souls, that's one which I think is all about remaining on one's path.
Absolutely.
And I feel that the voice that we encountered there is one that is familiar perhaps with drawing a line and not crossing the line, and just keeping on going. My favorite moment in that song is, I wonder what the spirits chose to believe and why they've chosen to grant me such grace.
Yeah. That first verse was really just me just writing down thoughts that I had, and sort of behind that one specific lyric is like sort of like this belief of like, I feel like I've been trying so hard to stay on this one goal, and somehow it's been working. And like somehow I've been given this like room to keep going, and I like, there's nothing really been trying to like stop me from like doing certain things and like veering from the path. And I think that was sort of the thought behind that, is like I feel like I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. To have run into relatively few sirens.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, metaphorically. And maybe it has something to do with drawing your lines and knowing what it is in advance that one will do. And having this awareness early on that youth can fill you with ambitious fantasies, and it's very, very easy to take things too far in a way that will lead to the loss of that which one desires.
Yeah.
So loss of things and things being taken from one are themes in the new music and also in the first record. So in Saint Bernard, the song Saint Bernard, there, I wish I'd never given you my leather coat. And then there's the possibility of giving the person the Saint Bernard as well. And what's the other?
Brandy.
And brandy.
Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like in a lot of the songs on that first LP, there's a kind of Midwest context, particularly in the song January, but not.
Yeah.
But here, the brandy will be helpful to keep us warm in our Midwest winter. What do you think about the recurrence of this theme of loss, where we have some characters who are losing everything? Captain Tori, she loses everything eventually. But in Saint Bernard, there's a the giving away
Yeah.
is quite a different. It's an intentional giving away.
Yeah.
It makes me. I really like. There's a phrase kenosis that relates to self-emptying love, and the kenotic way is like a spiritual path essentially, where it's about being loving and not the whole like lilies in the field idea that there's we're not grasping to have things. If the generosity of kind of giving things away can perhaps lead to the spirits choosing to grant one grace.
Yeah.
So what thoughts do you have about these characters that take things away and these characters that give things away as they recur throughout your songs?
I think a lot of the times, especially in St. Bernard, that song is all about giving away everything you have to someone who doesn't really want it, and doesn't really care that you're giving everything to them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one needs to draw the line there too. What behavior is one willing to resort to? It's not just I won't be greedy, but I won't resort to giving all of my valuable possessions away.
Right. It's like knowing how to have boundaries around yourself, not just for others' protection, but for your own protection as well.
Yeah.
And being able to, again, find that balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also important to understand, like, it can also very much be, like, knowing what type of people you should give your things to. Because if somebody's not going to be receptive of that, and if somebody's only focused on what they want and what they're getting, maybe you should just not give them anything.
Right.
Keep it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Don't give Captain Tory all the gold.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's a similar territory is explored in Rain Falls too. And in that song, when the fog lifts from the melting lake and I look at what's across, there's a question of whether the person I've been thinking about and been willing to give everything to, whether they will be there. And by that time we get to that song, there's some skepticism about whether the person will be. But it's still there though. The recurring phrase is still crazy for you, babe. So it's just really interesting how it kind of documents. I have these feelings for this person. I want to give them everything, and I'm kind of skeptical about how I'm thinking. And then some of the other songs I think on the first LP begin to experiment with what to do with that self-awareness too. These seem to that intelligent commitment to cultivating self-awareness and catching oneself in the act, thinking and feeling certain things, and being with oneself and loving oneself, making sure you don't give everything away to the wrong people.
Exactly.
That seems central. Does that remain central perhaps in the new songs that you're working on for the next LP?
For some of them, yeah. I mean, I didn't really notice before. You've drawn a lot of connections that I haven't even really made, but I think there are definitely some songs that still explore the idea of how much can you give to people without losing yourself, and what importance is there in what people want from you, and if people are receptive to what you're willing to give away.
In a nice little subtle detail in St. Bernard is, so I hope you still read my letters initially. Now I'm stranded in a frozen desert, so I hope you still read my letters. And then by the time we get to the second chorus, I think that it's become, I hope you still open my letters. So we're kind of grasping for even less,
Right.
I hope the person at least opens the letter.
Yeah.
But then Meant to Be is possibly my favorite song on the first LP. And there I feel like we've got to a place where we can see that what this particular other person wants is to be somebody to someone, anyone.
Yeah.
Desperately. It's like, please just move on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you want to take this from me? I see what the dynamic is. I don't particularly don't wish you any harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody wants to be seen and understood, and you are, but not from me.
Yeah.
Because there's this like obsessive, fanatical.
Yeah.
We were meant to be.
Yeah.
I have to persuade you. So there's a kind of. I don't think it's cruel, but there's a harshness and an assertiveness that I think goes alongside with this knowing where to draw the line, especially when it comes to knowing what to not let oneself end up doing for others,
Yeah.
or in relation to others. Could you say a bit more about the song Meant to Be?
Yeah.
Because I feel like it does have this kind of powerful assertiveness.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably the only song on the album, if I'm remembering correctly, that's sort of being told from the other perspective of like somebody who is trying to give everything to them and they just don't want it.
Right.
And I think
Stop giving me things.
Right, it's like-
I don't want your dog.
right, exactly. Like I never
Your dog is
asked
your
you
dog.
to do any of this for me. I like, no offense, but I don't care at all about you in any way. And I think it's sort of important to think about that too, of like, you know, sometimes doesn't need to be so intense, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I think it's like important to recognize that when you're choosing to give things away to others is like, what does this other person actually want? Because sometimes they are a good person and aren't going to hurt you, but there needs to be, again, that self-awareness of what is actually the dynamic of the situation and what would be the best path for each person in the situation.
Yes, and in this instance, in Meant to Be, the voice that we encounter seems to have grounded awareness that it's a stifling dynamic. Unless the dynamic changes, it's going to be difficult to grow.
Right.
The-
Yeah, it's a very one singular mindset of how this person like thinks things are supposed to go and supposed to be.
It's interesting thinking about the storytelling mind. Like our brains create stories all the time, and sometimes these stories can be helpful and a helpful lens to think about the situation, and sometimes one can get locked into a story that holds one back.
Yeah.
So you and I were meant to be, is like likely to. There's a lot of scope for that to be the latter type of story. But then you're using storytelling. If we see that there's a bunch of Captain Tories or sailors who are going to fall for the siren or fall in the way that Captain Tory falls, you're using storytelling in those two newest songs to like put a wedge in and create the possibility of growth and change. And one final song that I think is really useful to bring into conversation with the new ones is Beware the Beast. In a way, it's the most like Captain Tory insofar as it is using storytelling. The story of a beast. The beast is kind of analogous to the siren too. And the most interesting thing about that song for me is that throughout most of the song, we need to beware of the beast who roams this land, and its references to lucky survivors, but then a correction, no, there are none. There are no lucky survivors. Near the end of the song, the possibility of being a lucky survivor seems to be introduced. And specifically, if one heeds the warning in this song,
Yeah.
then that creates the possibility of there being lucky survivors, despite what the rest of the song has said. And one final bit to quote from that song, with rubies, sapphires, greed for gold, they're guarding power that they stole. So, what thoughts do you have presently about this beast, and what's going on in that couplet about the beasts, whatever the beasts are, guarding stolen power?
Yeah.
And how the song tells a story where it seems hopeless that one could survive the beasts, but then perhaps, paradoxically, if one heeds the warning in the song, then there could be survivors.
In terms of sort of the greed and like the treasures that this beast sort of has, I think it can sort of go both ways, because maybe they stole that treasure for themselves, but if you were to approach this beast and take their treasure, you would be the exact same as them. And this sort of like greed for gold, it's like you don't want to be like them, you know. And I think it definitely is, as a whole, the song is meant to be like a warning, sort of like a folk tale of like, this is what happens if you like try to take this on, like you can't survive, and the best way to survive is to just try and not confront it in the first place. And sort of
Don't engage with the beast.
right, like you should be running away instead of like trying to be like I survived this beast. You should just try to not have to deal with it in the first place.
Yeah, it's analogous to Meant to Be, where one could imagine the story of me and the beast is meant to be. Like I could have this whole kind of David and Goliath thing, where I will defeat the beast, or I could be like, beast, you and I are not meant to be.
Yeah.
Just move along.
Yeah, like it's really up to you if you're gonna make it an ordeal or not. Like it doesn't need to be. You can just move on.
Well, moving on, I think now is perhaps the ideal time for you to materialize in front of us and perform the song Captain Tory, after which we'll reflect just a little bit more on those two songs and some ways in which the themes that we recognized in the first LP resurface and evolve in these songs. But here's audible aid and visual aid before we wrap up our discussion. Thank you very much, FINICK, for performing Captain Tory here in the MCN6 TV studio. Take it away.
Gather around and listen closely. I know a tale you won't forget. You've heard the name of Captain Tory. Well, this begins the day we met. We were both young and full of wonder, never knew what was coming next. Wandering round we found each other, falling face down onto the deck. Brushed off the dust, she took my hand, I shook as she told me of her name. That was before the sword, the title, that was before the gold, the fame. Don't you know there's a million different ways you can take until it's gone? Break apart the very thing you sought. Don't you know there's a million different ways you can take it too far? Break until you're nothing but a song. lost to victory. Waving goodbye, I stood at the pier. Friends or foe and proud to ruthless, who I once knew had disappeared. Youth can fill you with ambitious fantasies, and you can try to reach them, but it may take more than what you deemed. Is there a line that you can draw, not to cross, and will you keep that promise, or be the first who did not? Don't you know there's a million different ways you can take until it's gone? Break apart the very thing you sought. Don't you know there's a million different ways you can take it too far? Break until you're nothing but a song. Every ship must eventually sink, and everything you fought for, everything you took will be in vain. And when you fall, you'll regret the things you had, 'cause it was never really yours. It was never gonna make it to the end. That was before the gold, before the sword. Don't you know there's a million different ways you can take until it's gone? Break apart the very thing you sought. Don't you know there's a million different ways you can take it too far? Break until you're nothing but a song. Every ship must eventually sink, and everything you fought for, everything you took will be in vain. And when you fall, you'll regret the things you had, 'cause it was never really yours. It was never gonna make it to the end.
Here we are, back again. That was some good materializing and dematerializing.
Thanks, I've been practicing.
So it's Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's striking me, it's the at the end of the chorus, don't you know there's a million different ways you can take it too far. Break until you're nothing but a song. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Break until you're nothing but a song.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas in Beware the Beast, the song is what could break us away from the narrative of me versus beast and liberate us from that. I'm just really intrigued by Captain Tory ceasing to exist and the song taking the place.
Yeah.
Especially because it's the point that the chorus ends, it's like the end of the chorus.
Yeah.
Could you expand a bit more on that idea of becoming nothing but a song?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of just like you're making an example of yourself. And if you do go too far and sort of make that your story, it's going to live on in this song and like this sort of legend, even after you're gone. And it's sort of like you will disappear, but your legacy won't. And unfortunately, this is what that is. So unless you want to change that and change what your song would be,
Yeah.
then you're going to fall and disappear. And this will be the only way people remember you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, Captain Tory loses herself and then becomes a helpful morality tale.
Yeah,
Pretty
much.
For the listeners. But conversely, if one knows where to draw the line with one's behavior, again, essentially, like, knowing in advance, well, if I find myself doing this, then I'm becoming greedier than I'm willing to be. Or if I find myself giving my St. Bernard away, then I'm being self-effacing in a way that isn't loving to myself. If one applies those kinds of lessons, then there's hope. There's a recurring kind of Christmas Carol, Scrooge. You could notice the errors of your ways and grow and not be stuck as a morality tale. It's not too late, Scrooge. Kind of feel. throughout your music, which is a nice, hopeful, generous
Yeah.
alternative to just okay, take the shirt off my back, take my dog, take all the things that I
Yeah.
actually need. There is this generosity, and I think even in like Meant to Be, there's like you want that the person who's like stuck in the story wants to be seen and heard, and you hope that they are, and you sense that they will be.
Just not with them.
Yeah, exactly. What you need is with me in the sea. We've been talking a lot about needs, like false needs, true needs, and the Sailor Out to Sea ends with this kind of false claim of the siren.
Yeah.
That what one needs is with me in the sea. It seems like the songs have quite a bit of wisdom to share about how to differentiate between false needs and true needs, and false claims, I have what you need, and being able to discern the non-siren truth.
Yeah.
Do you have any further thoughts about that? And perhaps, is that something that resonates in terms of the other material that you're working on?
Yeah, I think there's definitely in that song an aspect of the siren is lying to you and saying there's like, you should come in the sea because like you need to, like everything you want is here, everything you need is here, everything you've been looking for, you just need to jump off your boat, and once you get there, none of it is actually going to be true. And it's sort of like, what do you tell yourself of what you need and what you want, and how far you're willing to go to get there, and if it's actually going to work. Like Captain Tori is doing all this stuff to basically try and get all this power and gold and fame, basically, and at the end, at the end of it all, Captain Tori will fall, and all of it will be gone. And it's sort of like, if you jump off that boat and you tell yourself these lies for too long, you're going to lose everything you originally wanted.
Everything that's truly of value, including perhaps most essentially oneself.
Yeah.
One's sense of self. It makes me think of losing oneself to gain the world, and it was never going to make it to the end, is how Captain Tori ends, which I think is, the memento mori. I think to close and to kind of land our thoughts about the alternative to a fate like Captain Tori's. There's a couplet in each of the songs on Out to Sea that it would be interesting to bring into communication with one another. So, every ship must eventually sink, and everything you fought for, everything you took, will be in vain. In Captain Tori, in keeping with what we've been talking about. And then up on the boat you may float, but you won't be happy. So the idea of being up on the boat, floating on the boats, even though every ship will eventually sink, I think this metaphor of remaining up on the boat and floating, even if in the moment one doesn't feel particularly happy, relates to drawing a line that you won't cross. Do you think so? Do you have any final thoughts? Final thoughts on boats. Final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts on the promise and potential of remaining up on the boat, even though all ships will eventually sink?
I think in Sailor Out to Sea, that line is really basically saying like the boat is a safety net for you, and even though you might be safe up there, you won't be satisfied until you follow your greed and jump off of the ship.
Just relax, like let yourself go.
Yeah.
You know, dive in.
Right. It's like, hey man, is it really worth it to stay alive? You know? Whereas in Captain Tory, it's like, I mean, I think the ship sinking is sort of more of a reference to everyone dies, there's an end to your path, and what you do with it is what will ultimately define you. And it's sort of like, is this really what you want to be doing while you're on that ship? And I think there's sort of this lesson of when you're on a boat, what are you willing to do to get what you want, and how's it going to end for you?
Yeah. So, and we're on a boat. In both cases, it seems to be it's a metaphor for being alive, and I really like this particular metaphor of like navigating the waters on one's boat. The songs are doing really interesting things with it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And yeah, I trust that you'll continue to navigate the waters well, and and that the spirits will continue choosing to grant you grace as they appreciate your efforts. So, on which note, hopefully, once the full record is done at the Minnehaha Recording Company, you can come back and share a bit more about your adventures on the sea.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. First appearance on Back to the City from FINICK, who, by the time that this airs, I think your next opportunity to catch FINICK live is most likely to be Wednesday, August 21st at the Troubadour Wine Bar, or perhaps even at Waterworks on Monday, August 12th, which is at Rains Park. Do you know anything more about that event?
No.
For us, it's quite a way in the future. But yeah, Waterworks, Monday, August 12th, or Troubadour Wine Bar, Wednesday, August 21st. And also, and by the time this airs, I suspect FINICK will have wrapped up work on the new album. We'll see. Plain sailing, hopefully.
Yeah.
In the meantime. Thanks for coming in. This has been Back to the City. I'm Simon Calder. We'll be back next Wednesday at 10 o'clock with another Minneapolis music conversation. Thanks for coming in, FINICK.
Thank you.